When you think about, say, contributing to humanitarian aid, or maybe you see images of a crisis unfolding somewhere globally, you'll often notice two distinct types of organizations stepping up. You've got those deeply rooted in faith, and then those that are, well, entirely secular. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Does the very nature of their foundation, faith-driven or secular, actually impact how effectively they deliver aid, to those in desperate need? Today, we're taking a deep dive into precisely that question. We've synthesized insights from three distinct, well-researched perspectives. It's almost like having a conservative analyst, a liberal advocate, and maybe a data scientist in the room with us, each offering a really fascinating viewpoint on this complex issue. So our mission for you today is to unpack the core arguments, highlight some surprising facts maybe, and help you navigate the unique strengths and challenges of both approaches. We want to give you a truly well-rounded, informed perspective on this critical topic. So get ready to explore the nuances of global aid delivery. Okay, let's unpack this then. The question itself is quite direct. When it comes to humanitarian aid, is one approach, faith-based or secular, inherently more effective? It's a question that immediately sparks a lot of different viewpoints, and you can see why. It touches on values, practicality, deeply held beliefs.
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating here is how our sources present such a clear initial divergence of opinion. It's really stark. We get these powerful arguments for the advantages of faith-based organizations from one perspective, while another robustly highlights the distinct strengths of the secular ones. And then, yeah, a third steps in with a more empirical, sort of context-driven analysis, almost like a referee, like you said.
Right. So let's begin by exploring that powerful case made for faith-based organizations. This is often highlighted, as you noted, from a more conservative viewpoint. What makes them so uniquely positioned in the world of aid?
Well, one of the most compelling arguments, I think, for faith-based organizations, or FBOs as they're often called, it really centers on their deep-rooted community ties and networks. And these aren't just, superficial connections. We're talking about relationships often built over decades, sometimes centuries.
Wow, century.
Yeah, through local churches, mosques, temples, other religious institutions. This long-standing presence, it allows FBOs to understand community needs really intimately. Not just the visible stuff, but the underlying social and cultural dynamics, too.
So it's not just about showing up when disaster strikes, but actually being part of the fabric of the community already. How does that actually translate into tangible benefits, on the ground?
Exactly. That's the key. These established connections, they foster immense trust and credibility. Our sources note that people are often far more likely to engage with and accept help from organizations that share their cultural and religious values.
Okay.
And this isn't trivial, right? It can dramatically enhance the acceptance, the reach, and ultimately the impact of aid efforts, especially in areas where maybe external or unfamiliar groups might face suspicion or resistance.
Yeah, I could see that.
Imagine a local church that's already running a food pantry. When a wider crisis hits, they're not starting from scratch trying to build trust. They have it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. This argument that FBOs operate within a strong moral and ethical framework. It's not just about rules, as you said, but a deeper sense of mission. How does that actually translate into effective aid delivery?
It's a critical distinction they make.
Yeah.
This framework, it often promotes a culture of profound accountability and stewardship. That's the idea anyway.
Okay.
The argument is that these organizations are driven by a mission aligning with values like compassion, service, integrity. And this often leads to more responsible management of resources. And, importantly, greater transparency with local communities. For instance, think about areas where traditional governance might be weak, or maybe corruption is prevalent.
Right.
Local FBOs are frequently the first and most trusted point of contact for aid distribution. Their sort of moral authority and long-standing presence can sometimes allow them to bypass bureaucratic hurdles, maybe even deter local corruption in ways other organizations might struggle with, ensuring donor contributions are actually used effectively.
Right.
That level of sort of intrinsic accountability, it can be surprisingly powerful.
And think about the dedication. That conservative perspective really highlights that FBOs often have this incredibly dedicated volunteer base, deeply motivated by their beliefs to provide service. It implies a sense of mission beyond just, a professional obligation.
Yeah, and this intrinsic motivation is seen as a powerful asset. The sources indicate it can result in significantly lower operational costs. Why? Because volunteers reduce the need for as many salaried staff.
Makes sense.
We've actually seen analyses suggesting that volunteer-driven FBOs, particularly at the local level, can achieve administrative overhead sometimes well, maybe 20–30% less than larger, more salaried secular operations.
It's a big difference.
It is. It means a larger percentage of every dollar donated goes directly to frontline aid efforts. Plus, this often includes local volunteerism, which not only enhances the cultural relevance of aid, but also empowers communities, right? Builds local capacity, resilience. It can even turn aid recipients into aid providers themselves.
And it's not just local, is it? This perspective points out that FBOs frequently have these extensive global networks, partnerships with other religious organizations, allowing them to mobilize support really quickly across borders.
Absolutely. This global reach provides a unique pool of resources. Think vast congregational and religious networks. This translates into additional funding, manpower, material resources. These networks can facilitate rapid dissemination of information and mobilization of support during crises. That's especially beneficial for rapid response in complex emergencies. You can almost picture a global faith community acting as a kind of rapid response system, leveraging these pre-existing channels of communication and trust.
Okay, and finally, this viewpoint suggests many FBOs take a more holistic approach, addressing immediate needs food, shelter, but also focusing on the spiritual and emotional well-being of individuals.
Right, and this comprehensive approach, according to the sources advocating for it, is seen as leading to more profound and lasting changes. By addressing not just the material, but also the psychological and, yes, spiritual dimensions of suffering. It's argued it can foster a sense of hope and purpose that extends beyond just immediate relief. This deeper engagement, the argument goes, contributes to long-term impact and sustainability, helping individuals and communities rebuild not just structures, but lives.
So that's a truly compelling picture for faith-based organizations. You've got the deep community roots, the moral compass, these incredibly motivated volunteers. It really stands out. But let's pivot now. From a more liberal perspective, what distinct advantages do secular organizations bring to the humanitarian aid table? How do they approach it differently? And why are they also considered indispensable?
Yeah, this is where we see a really fascinating contrast. While FBOs often leverage shared values, this liberal perspective emphasizes that secular organizations offer distinct strengths. And these strengths are seen as particularly crucial for effective aid delivery in our, well, incredibly diverse world with complex conflicts.
One of the strongest arguments I saw for secular organizations centers on inclusivity and neutrality. The viewpoint suggests these are crucial in diverse or conflict-prone areas because secular groups are typically seen as impartial.
Absolutely. This neutrality is often considered paramount. It allows secular organizations to distribute aid based solely on need, without any underlying religious or cultural biases or preconditions.
Right, no strings attached, so to speak.
Exactly, and this is vital in preventing further division, ensuring aid reaches all individuals equitably regardless of their background, beliefs, or religious affiliation. In highly sensitive areas, honestly, a neutral banner can literally be the difference between aid reaching people and being obstructed or rejected.
Okay, and just as FBOs have their ethical frameworks, this perspective argues that secular organizations also adhere to high ethical standards, but specifically guided by universal principles of human rights and equality. How does this ethical grounding shape their operations differently?
Well, this framework really prioritizes inclusivity, non-discrimination, and the inherent dignity of all individuals. That's the core. The sources state this approach is vital in promoting long-term development and empowerment within communities. Often, the focus is more on capacity building and sustainable progress, rather than just short-term relief.
I see.
So, instead of maybe addressing spiritual needs, the focus is squarely on enabling self-sufficiency and upholding fundamental rights for everyone, regardless of their belief system.
And what about volunteers? While FBOs have faith-driven volunteers, this perspective counters that secular nonprofits attract equally passionate volunteers, driven by the commitment to human rights, social justice, broader humanitarian principles. It's a different kind of fire, maybe, but still a fire.
Indeed. And the motivation is described as equally powerful. The source might be different, a belief in universal human dignity rather than maybe a divine command, but the outcome is often a highly dedicated volunteer base. This can lead to highly effective teams and often really innovative approaches that prioritize sustainable development and long-term impact. often driven by just a profound sense of global citizenship and social responsibility.
This perspective also highlights secular nonprofits as often being at the forefront of innovation in humanitarian aid, frequently employing advanced technologies and methodologies. Can you give us a sense of what kind of innovations we're talking about here?
Oh, absolutely. We see secular groups really pushing the boundaries sometimes with cutting-edge solutions. For example, some are leveraging things like blockchain technology for transparent supply chain management.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, ensuring aid reaches its intended destination without diversion. Others might be employing AI and predictive analytics to forecast disaster zones and humanitarian needs, allowing for hyper-targeted and preemptive aid delivery.
Really proactive.
Exactly. And these are often scalable solutions designed to be adaptable across diverse crises, regardless of the local religious or cultural context. It's about improving efficiency and effectiveness, often on a massive scale.
And just like their faith-based counterparts, this viewpoint points out that secular organizations also benefit from robust global networks and partnerships. How do these compare or contrast?
It's a different kind of network, usually. While FBOs often connect through religious affiliations, secular organizations tend to build extensive networks with international bodies like the UN,
Oh, right.
national governments, other non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and even private sector partners sometimes. This collaborative approach, as stated in the sources, allows them to pool vast resources and diverse expertise really efficiently, enhancing their capacity to respond swiftly and effectively to complex humanitarian needs, often operating at a highly coordinated sort of macro level.
Okay, so we've heard incredibly compelling arguments from both sides, highlighting unique and powerful strengths for both FBOs and secular groups. Now, what does a more scientific, empirical lens tell us? Which approach is ultimately better? Or maybe how should we even view this debate? Does the data lean one way or the other?
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the empirical analysis, the third perspective, really underscores that there is no single better answer. That seems to be the consensus. What's fascinating, and perhaps the most crucial takeaway, is that the effectiveness of these organizations isn't solely determined by their religious or secular orientation. It's highly context-dependent.
That's key, isn't it? The scientific analysis suggests FBOs might have an advantage where their religious affiliations align strongly with local beliefs, leveraging that existing trust we talked about. But secular organizations often excel where neutrality is paramount, like in areas with deep religious or ethnic tensions.
Precisely. In communities with a strong shared faith, an FBO might gain faster acceptance, deeper engagement, because they speak the same cultural and maybe spiritual language.
Right, it feels natural.
Their presence feels natural, trustworthy. Conversely, in a conflict zone where religious identity itself might be a source of tension, a strictly neutral secular organization can often operate more safely and distribute aid without inadvertently making things worse, exacerbating divisions. They can ensure equitable distribution based purely on need. So this nuanced understanding is just crucial for effectively deploying resources.
Okay, and what about the motivation of staff and volunteers? Whether it's religious beliefs or a commitment to human rights driving them, both are identified as strong intrinsic motivations. So, from a scientific standpoint, what's truly effective here?
Well, the sources indicate the key is not necessarily the source of the motivation itself, but how effectively organizations manage to harness that passion and commitment to meet their objectives.
Ah, the management piece.
Yes. Both types of intrinsic motivation can drive incredible dedication, efficiency, innovation. What truly matters seems to be the organizational culture, the leadership, the management systems that translate that passion into concrete, impactful action, making sure volunteers and staff are deployed optimally and feel valued, essentially.
The empirical analysis also strongly emphasizes that operational efficiency for both types of organizations often hinges on their ability to form effective partnerships and networks. We touched on networks before, but this emphasizes partnership.
Absolutely. Studies mentioned in our sources consistently show this. Organizations, whether they're faith-based or secular, that effectively collaborate with local governments, international agencies, other NGOs, they tend to mobilize resources more efficiently and respond more swiftly to crises, it's clear.
Okay.
These partnerships leverage diverse expertise, they pool resources, they avoid duplication of efforts.
Yeah.
It significantly enhances overall impact. It's basically a force multiplier, regardless of the organization's foundational identity.
And a scientific approach, of course, demands evidence. This analysis highlights that rigorous assessment of outcomes and impacts. Data-driven insights are essential for understanding what works and why.
Yeah, transparency and accountability emerge as universal best practices, regardless of an organization's mission statement. Both faith-based and secular organizations, the sources say,
Hmm.
can significantly benefit from prioritizing these elements.
Hmm.
Robust monitoring and evaluation systems. They aren't just about reporting back to donors. They're vital tools for actually refining and enhancing strategies, for identifying what's truly making a difference on the ground, and ensuring continuous improvement in aid delivery. It's about learning and adapting based on real-world results.
And finally, this perspective reminds us that effective aid delivery, regardless of who's doing it, often requires a really deep understanding of local customs, languages, social dynamics.
This point is so critical for relevance. Both types of organizations can absolutely excel at this if they consciously invest in building local capacities, engaging authentically with community leaders, truly listening to stakeholders.
Right.
When aid is delivered with genuine cultural competency, it's not just accepted, it's often owned by the community. And that makes it far more relevant, effective, and ultimately sustainable in its local context. It's the difference between just imposing a solution and actually co-creating one.
So what does this all mean for you, listening in? Someone trying to understand humanitarian aid, maybe deciding where to direct your own support. It really sounds like both types of organizations play crucial roles. They're both truly essential, aren't they?
That's the overarching conclusion, definitely. From these diverse perspectives, it's clear. Neither type of organization is inherently superior across all contexts. It just doesn't work like that. Instead, their diverse approaches are actually complementary rather than competitive.
Complementary. Interesting.
Yeah, the debate summary highlights that the most effective approach likely involves intentionally leveraging the unique strengths of both faith-based and secular organizations.
So it's about fostering cooperation then, not competition between these entities, making sure that aid reaches those in need most effectively, most equitably, irrespective of religious affiliation, political leanings, or, any other dividing factor. It paints a picture of a global effort that really needs every player at the table.
Wow. Okay, what an incredible deep dive into this complex and, let's face it, often vital world of humanitarian aid. We've seen that whether an organization is faith-based or secular, its true effectiveness seems to hinge on this powerful blend. Deep community trust, strong ethical frameworks, incredibly motivated people, extensive global reach, and crucially, a commitment to evidence-based, context-specific approaches. It's far more nuanced than just picking a side, isn't it?
It really is.
Hmm.
And it's a powerful reminder, I think, that a world facing such immense challenges needs all hands on deck. It needs us drawing on every strength available from both types of organizations. In fact, when you look at the big picture, these distinct approaches, when you view them as parts of a larger ecosystem, they arguably make the global aid response far more robust and resilient than either could ever be on its own.
Hmm. That raises a really important question for you to maybe mull over after this. In what specific ways could intentionally designed collaborations between faith-based and secular organizations not just deliver aid more efficiently, but maybe also build bridges of understanding and shared purpose in communities that might otherwise be divided by those very distinctions, making their impact even more profound and lasting? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.